Hello and welcome to a CX Moment. I'm Roisin Hunt at Zendesk and we're so glad that you're with us here today. So for anyone who is new to a CX Moment, these are candid conversations and they're really an opportunity to hear insights and experiences from the world of support leaders and hopefully giving you some practical nuggets of wisdom that you can take back to your own teams. So in this episode of a CX Moment, we're delighted to be joined by Chris Karp, Chief Customer Officer at Auctane. Now, Auctane's goal is to bring great shipping experiences to the 500 million households that they reach every year. So whether that's a delivery run from a warehouse, an office, or a coffee shop, these modern businesses really rely on quick and seamless shipping to reach their customers. And as we know, shipping is the backbone of e-commerce, and Auctane helps everyone from small Etsy business owners to large global businesses with their products like ShipStation, Stamps.com, Global Post, and many others around the world. Now, before we dive into today's conversation with Chris, we would love to hear from you joining us online. We're curious. If you have a negative shipping experience with a brand, as in you get a delayed or a missing package, how likely are you to buy from that company or business again? So we've got A, I'd give them another chance. These things happen. B, no way, never again. Or C, never again. And I'd be likely to share my negative experience online. So let us know in the chat what you would do if you had a delayed or missing package, A, B, or C. And you can also ask questions as we go through today's session with Chris. So let's get those questions into the chat and we'll make this conversation as interactive as possible. All right, that is enough from me. Let's hear from Chris. Welcome, Chris. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thanks for having me.
We're getting some responses into the chat. A, people are likely to give a business another chance, but we'll see how that materializes as we go through the conversation. So Auctane operates an ecosystem of brands within the mailing and shipping industries, and it sounds very complex with the various product offerings. So set the scene for us a little in how your customer experience and support is structured within that complex ecosystem.
Yeah, it's certainly complex, but probably not too different from how most customer experience organizations are structured. So we have a collection of 11 brands. You talked a little bit about some of them in the intro across the world, focused on shipping, supply chain management. Some products overlap, some are complementary, some are completely separate verticals with a mix of B2B and B2C customers. And our organizational design is really built around verticals tied to each major step of the customer journey. So implementation, North America support, rest of world support, customer success. And then we have key supporting functions managed in our operations team that handles WFM, QA, learning and development. And then we just recently added a senior leadership role focused just on the employee experience. And I'd say across all brands, we probably have around 2 million customers that are a mix, like I said, of B2B and B2C.
So when we talk about those 2 million customers, you talk about B2C, B2B, what types of customers do you interact with across the products? Like, are they, we talked about small businesses, big businesses. Tell us more about the types of folks you're interacting with.
Yeah, it's a complete mix. So across all those customers, you've got consumers, you have merchants. Consumers might use a brand such as Stamps.com, which you mentioned, is Packlink, which is in Europe. We have businesses that everything from S&B all the way to enterprise level, like H&M. And then to kind of engage with them, we use all of the normal channels. So we use voice, chat, email. And then we've just also begun to spin up a team focused around social media as well. And then a lot of the focus that we have actually going forward is to build more of a persona-based approach to how we start delivering support, so we can start to bucket customers, not just from a product perspective, but also who they are in the industry and how they interact. So that's just a little bit about who our customers are, but it really spans the entire spectrum from, a consumer that's going to do a one-time use of a product all the way to a huge enterprise platform.
Yeah, so it's quite challenging then to meet the needs of all of those different types of personas, like you mentioned, grouping them into personas. And I know when we spoke earlier, you really talked about this vision for a unified customer experience. So that is regardless of the product, regardless of the type or the size.
Yeah.
This is a great vision. Tell us more about what you're hoping to achieve with this and what underpins that.
Yeah, I actually think there's two parts to our vision. So one is who do we want to be to our customer, and then the other is who do we want to be to the company. It's kind of starting with the customer. I think at the core, every customer, regardless of who they are, what product they're using, has the same needs.
Mm.
Whether it's a single consumer or enterprise business, I think they want support to be responsive, solve the issue at hand, but also anticipate their future needs that might not be immediately obvious to them, and then make them feel like that the engagement is personalized, and not personalized just by using their name, but really knowing their history and weaving that into the engagement, making sure it's customized for their particular situation. What's their persona? What are their recent experiences? What's their level of knowledge of the product? So the vision is really simple. How do we create a meaningful connection really in every interaction that feels hyper contextualized, so that it's a unique customer experience and it can scale across every channel and every interaction. So essentially what we're saying is, how do you engage millions of customers across millions of interactions and make every one of those feel unique, but then scalable at the same time? And
Mm.
then the second part is really, who do we want to be to our company? We want to elevate what it means, to be support within an organization. In every one of those interactions, what are we doing to drive more informed customers, better buying behaviors, driving relevant adoption, and identifying upsell opportunities? We want our organization not just to be reactive, but then how do we also use our data to inform internal stakeholders, drive product direction, upselling strategies, right? Connecting the dots between customer behavior and retention, and really use our insights, because they are the heartbeat of the customer, and
Mhm.
establish ourselves as that source of truth within the company. So those are really, I think, two components of our vision of who we want to be to our customers and who do we want to be to our organization.
Yeah, and I think there's so much to dive into in each of those two areas. And I want to dive into the agent piece for a little bit, because when we spoke earlier, you mentioned, elevating the role of the agent, giving them autonomy and empowering them to make, interactions with customers, whether it's B2B or B2C, really,
Yeah.
really meaningful. And you also spoke then about aligning the success of support with business priorities. Success metrics tend to be about resolution times, NPS scores, but you talked about the love language of leadership. Can you tell us more about that and how you've brought that into your strategy?
Yeah, I can talk about the agent piece first, because there's a couple questions, so I can touch on that. I think in terms of, as we think about empowering the agents and creating those more meaningful connections, we have to overhaul the entire ecosystem that all of our team members are operating under. So we got to figure out what information matters the most. How do you surface that information or trigger action and awareness from it? There's limited digital workspace that our agents are working from. So how do we not overwhelm them to give them the right guidance? We also have to retrain them to think about each engagement differently, update our technology stack to support better intelligent routing, to understand customer personas, match them up, all kinds of stuff like that. And then how do we build an internal and external omni-channel experience? All of these things then are connected to your workforce management, your QA, rewards and recognition, compensation. So almost the entire ecosystem from the ground up, we're going to overhaul and replace so that we can do some of these things.
Mhm.
In terms of aligning, the success and support with the business and the love language, I think the first thing is, I don't think one size fits all. And a lot of aligning, your business priorities with support, I think also comes down to the executive leadership team. And I know you and I talked a little bit about that, and that's the term came up, kind of what's the love language. Figuring out what the love language is of your senior leadership team, I think is one of the first things to really sort of figure out what matters to them, right? And then work backwards to understand how support or customer success and implementation, how do those then connect into what really matters? A simple example of that is, revenue matters, right? So, could we analyze data and really sort of understand, hey, we're finding some churn, and the churn is happening at a high rate during the first 6 months. So then could we build a coordinated plan across multiple teams that could, be both reactive and proactive, that can actually identify and reduce the churn that's happening. And if you're able to do things like that, what it begins to do is that you can actually start to see not just churn reduction, but now you're actually starting to grow revenue. And
Mhm.
you're changing who you are to the organization as not just a group that's actually handling calls and responding to chats, but you're actually one that's part of the core strategy of revenue growth and customer retention. And I think those are ways that we're thinking about how we want support and the role it plays within the organization to really kind of take a step up from what it has in the past.
And then what, when you talk about elevating the role of the agents and getting that data and capturing it and really making it a revenue growth center as opposed to a cost center, what does that do then for the individual agents and the team as a whole? What's the impact?
Well, I think the impact is huge. The more empowerment, the more autonomy I think that you give the team, the more they're bought into the overall mission. I think that the more scripted it feels to the agent, I think we struggle with engagement, we struggle with retention of the agent, and I think that's where there can be a lot of struggles. A lot of our focus right now is on the agent and our employee. I think a lot of times we kind of, teams will focus on the customer experience, but really what we really want to begin to focus on heavily is the employee experience, and then view that as an input and view the customer experience as an output. And a lot of that comes with what you and I have talked about around how do you empower the agent to make decisions autonomously on calls or on chats with merchants, where they have the ability to apply judgment based on the situation, what they're seeing, and try to make things right for that customer. And then also knowing how to use the information that's in front of them. I'd love for an agent to be able to see that the last 3 CSATs or most previous NPS was negative. That should kick off a conversation that they can have with that customer to find out what's going on, what can I help with? How do we identify churn risk through behavioral patterns ahead of time, and then kick off engagements that let us get in front of it before the customer ever churns? So those are some of the things that we're working on.
And I want to go back a little bit because, you talked about agents having visibility and having access to data so that they can offer personalized experiences. You've got a complex ecosystem. What are the tools and integrations that you're using currently to connect those teams and break down silos?
So we've got a mix of platforms. It's interesting, right? Every company has a little bit different sort of story. We're a mix of organic growth, but a lot of acquisition. So we have a lot of different systems right now. We have Zendesk, we have Salesforce, we have Oracle Service Cloud. We're actually in the process right now of trying to unify around Zendesk as much as we can, make it native within Zendesk, and then limit some of the third parties that we have. We have Ring Central, we have Loris. What are some of the things that we can do natively, and then only go into a third party if we have to? And then all of our technology decisions are being built around what's the future state that we're trying to get to for our agents, and then making sure that we're trying to future proof that as much as possible, and thinking ahead from that perspective. And we're trying to build the processes out first. What do we want them to do? How do we want the interactions to actually play out? And then leverage technology to then automate that and make it simpler, automate it, leverage AI, however we want to do that. So that's kind of the approach that we're taking. And we've actually been working really closely with Zendesk on this. And you guys have been a huge help for us to build out what this digital transformation strategy looks like, and helping us assess where our priorities should be. So I think it's not something that we're going to complete overnight. I think it's going to be probably an 18-month strategy for us, but we started the journey and we're pretty excited about it.
Well, that is awesome to hear, and simple, keep it simple, and we do have a question from Logan in the chat about, when you talk about priorities, as a rapidly growing organization with new agents starting daily, what do you think should be the agents or business's priority for the first 60 to 90 days? And I know that you kind of are internal knowledge and that kind of legacy knowledge is really important to you. So what would you offer as advice to Logan?
So for me, I think it's about getting them comfortable and fully integrated into the culture. And I think it depends on each culture and how each business sort of approaches that. I think some companies might have the mindset of, I've got to get somebody up and running as fast as possible and make them as productive as they can fast as possible. I kind of view it the opposite. I think the slower you bring them on, limit the type of calls or chats that they're getting, get them really comfortable, get them fully integrated into the culture, try not to drown them out as much as possible. That to me is really what matters a lot, for me at least, in the first 60 or 90 days, making them feel supported. I actually want a new agent to feel like they have a multi-year career path from day one once they join. And I think focusing on the employee engagement component and then slowly bringing them up, I think is going to help their confidence, set them up for success quite a bit more, and then really teach them how to use the tools that are around them, because none of them are going to be able to master a product depending on the complexity within their first 60 or 90 days. So for me, those are my priorities. Now, those priorities might not map to other companies for different reasons. That doesn't make it right or wrong. But the approach that we take is I really would like to have them have a slower start with us, get them fully integrated into the culture, make sure that they really are comfortable with their surroundings and the tools and the platform, and that when they are working with a customer live, they're in the best position to deliver an exceptional experience.
Well, I think this is very interesting because when we spoke, we talked about peak times, right? Retail, e-commerce, there are clearly peak times during the year, especially the holidays being one of them. And you said that you actually don't hire past a certain date because it's not going to give them that experience of really feeling empowered and tooled up to deliver the best experience.
Yeah, and that's kind of how we operate. Essentially, we won't hire anybody pretty much after October for peak, because there's just simply not enough time to onboard them, to set them up for success. I mean, we could have the mindset where it's a warm body and we just want to throw it at volume that's coming in. But the reality is that if you deliver a poor experience to a merchant, it's going to cause you 5 times as much work, because they're going to call back in multiple times potentially. There might be an escalation. And so we just don't see the value in trying to do that. And also, it's a terrible employee experience as well. You're overwhelmed, you're stressed, they're probably going to quit. And that's not really necessarily what we want. So we really try to map out a multi-month workforce management plan in advance, so we know how many people we think we need. And if we don't have enough people to cover it, the feedback that we always give them is, don't rush through the interactions. Once you're talking to a customer, spend the time, do it right, and move to the next. We'll get as much as we can. We only have a few key days during peak that are really out of control. And obviously we try to have all hands on deck for those. But yeah, we have a pretty good cutoff, and we won't really violate that rule, because there just is no value to the employee and there's no value to the customer.
Yeah, and this is something that you also embodied in a former life, because you were with Chewy.com and you had some really great options in place to really set the agents up for success. Like, you talk about a multi-year career as an agent, and then you also, you had that at Chewy.com, particularly going above and beyond and feeling empowered to have those meaningful customer exchanges. So how important is it to allow agents to have the autonomy to do that? And can you give us some examples that maybe people can be inspired by?
Yeah. There's no question that Chewy is known for that, specifically delighting customers and unexpected service. People have probably seen posts. A lot of the Chewy customer service engagements go viral. But yeah, I mean, I think it's critical that agents have autonomy to surprise and delight. And I think this can be in many forms, and it's different based on who the company is, what their core values are, who their customers are. But it could be anything from, free months of subscription, discounts, waiving fees. Chewy's famous for sending flowers to pet parents if their pet had recently passed away. They might also surprise them with a painting. It's an actual painting of their pet if they've uploaded the picture into their profile. And I think those type of things matter a lot. It's difficult to really measure the true impact of what that's given you on the bottom line. And so I think a lot of it ties back to what are the core values of the company and what you want to deliver. But I think in the end, what it does is it builds up credibility, and it makes it a much more enjoyable experience for the merchants. And it makes it a much more enjoyable experience for your team members, your agents, and your employees. At Chewy, is some of we've had some amazing examples. We had a merchant that was so blown away by what we did. She actually used to write. She was a professional jingle writer. She would write them for commercials and things. And she wrote a custom one for us, and she sent us an MP3 of it, basically for everyone to listen to. We played it in front of the entire organization. We sent flowers to a customer that I think she was 70, 75, and she actually made a post on Facebook that it was the first time in her life that she'd ever received flowers, and she had, it was her response was really emotional. And some of these things maybe sound trivial or small, but we have to remember we're not talking to customers, we're talking to people, human beings. And if we connect with them on that level, no matter what's at stake and what kind of business you're in, they appreciate that. And I think that's where Chewy excels above and beyond anybody else. And I'm trying to take what I've learned from Chewy and actually apply it at Auctane. And I absolutely think everybody should be thinking in that way.
And just to move on from that a little bit, because you also, we've got the positive and how meaningful those posts of moment of delight and surprise are. But we also talk about social media management, reputation management, reviews, right? So those are hot topics. Our audience are very forgiving, by the way. So they said, you know, they would not throw anyone under the bus if they had a loss with the package. So thank you for being human out there. But we talked to Trustpilot, you know, some time ago, and we asked this question of bad reviews. Should you leave them up? How do you address them? You know, what's your philosophy on that?
Yeah, I'm super sensitive to reviews. Every review, so we have a social media listener that will go out, pull it in. We have a Slack channel, and then we also have some other applications that we use to manage it. I actually read every single bad review that gets posted, whether it's a Better Business review, whether it's something on Trustpilot, whether it's on BigCommerce. And so we actually have when I joined, we didn't have any focus around responding to those reviews. So we kind of put a stake in the ground and said, we're going to respond to every single review no matter what. And, you know, I think part of the idea is I want to hear from our most vocal critics, because we're not perfect and we drop the ball a lot. And I really want to learn what could we have done better, even if they're going to leave us. You know, let's take the high road. What can we do to help you? Still want to make it right. And so we respond to every single negative review. We send some delight moments to merchants that send us good reviews. And we have a whole team now that we've put in place so that we can respond to social media through Twitter, Facebook, even Instagram, and then the reviews in general. But for us, the reviews matter quite a bit as well, because with some of the websites, our application ranking and where it comes up in search results will be tied directly back to, you know, some of the review scores. And since we've implemented, we've actually had instances where the customer would leave us like a 1 star out of 5. We go work with them, we take care of it. And because of how we responded, they actually will go back and they've changed the review. We will never ask them to change the review, but they will do it sometimes just on their own. And those are the moments that we really love, because it shows that we made a difference. And it also shows, I think, for a lot of the merchants that go to social media into a review site, for many of them, they just feel like they haven't been heard. And I think for us, what matters a lot is that every single merchant feels seen and they feel heard. And when we respond back within minutes of them posting reviews in social media, and then we address the issue, I think part of that, it's about making them feeling like, okay, we heard you, we took care of it, and they feel a whole lot better. And so I think those type of approaches have helped us tremendously in turning around not just negative reviews, but saving merchants and creating a different type of persona that we didn't have before.
Well, I think that's so interesting, because also you're supporting small business owners, right? And so if their customers are impacted negatively, you know, that is somebody's livelihood. So that is a big responsibility in a lot of ways. And Gideon has a really good point, you know, about compassion just playing a huge role in sales in general. And then we have a question.
So
sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I
was going to answer the question that was posted over there.
Oh, perfect. Yeah, Barbara, we'll bring it up. Barbara's question on screen. How can a customer service agent encourage more people to feel comfortable working in this area when it's not easy to satisfy everyone?
So which area specifically? What would be the context? I don't think I fully understand the question, so I want to make sure I answer it correctly.
Well, we'll wait to hear from Barbara, but I suppose maybe it's about, I think maybe being empowered to engage with those reviews. Like, do you have best practices? I'm sure you have guidelines for how to approach those.
We do. So specifically to the reviews, we actually have guidelines and special training that we'll deliver to people of kind of what to say in general, what you can say, especially because it's public, right? We have specific approaches for how we try to de-escalate something, because you never want to get into a Twitter war with somebody. It never is a good thing at all. And so you're kind of figuring out how we go through that. We put a lot of thought into messaging. And then in terms of how we actually handle the issue directly, honestly, we always try to pull them off social media and just talk to them directly. A lot of customers are keyboard warriors, and they might express, you know, sort of one emotion in writing, and then when you get them on the phone, they're actually very easy to talk to, common sense, and they just wanted to hear from you. And now that they know that they've been heard, they're a lot easier to kind of work with. So that's kind of the approach that we take. And we try to do is have a closed loop process where each time we learn a little bit, we update our playbook, and we get better and we get better and we get better.
Yeah. And it's never perfect. Like you said, you're always learning. And I think Miguel had hit the nail on the head. Empathy is the key word. Now we are 5 minutes to the end. We knew this would go super fast, and we just want to pivot really quickly and talk about the hot topic, which is on everyone's minds, and that is AI. What are your thoughts on AI in service in a general sense? And then if we have time, what are you looking at within your own ecosystem around implementing and adopting AI?
So I'm still trying to figure out AI. I don't have the best answer for you. I kind of feel like everybody's in that boat. We've done a few things. We've connected ChatGPT to our knowledge base. We've begun to test it out internally. It has a great search engine. We are moving over to Ultimate AI as our chatbot. We actually just met with Zendesk not long ago to learn more about where they're going with AI. I think for me, there's all these sort of tactical examples of AI can do this specific thing, can do this specific thing. Where I'm struggling is I really would like to see more of a broader strategy for how AI long-term fits into our overall support strategy. And I don't feel like I have that right now. And then we have all these different technologies. I think a lot of the leaders on this call are probably getting hit from different vendors. We're adding AI. How does it overlap? What's overlapping? What's complementary? So a lot of our focus right now, between now and probably Q1 of 24, is really building kind of a technology map of how all the different AI functions from different vendors fit together. And then what is our vision for how we want to use AI so that we can start having more meaningful conversations with Zendesk and other partners of how we want that to be integrated. So I think we're on a journey right now. We're just learning, we're experimenting, we're learning. And I'm probably also going to hire someone who's AI focused onto the staff in 24 as well, that has AI experience that can come in and help. I don't have a strong AI background. I think for me, it's really just getting a bigger picture of how AI fits into what we want to do, and then how all these different solutions work together and what that means for our digital transformation strategy.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Start with like what you're trying to solve for, and then look for the right product to do that, rather than starting with the solution and then making your problem, try to fix it that way.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, very quickly in the last minute, it sounds like this might be next on your priority list, but what is next on your priority list, Chris, for this year and onwards?
It's actually people. So AI matters, but people is really next on the priority list. And I alluded to it a little bit earlier, but we've created a dedicated position just focused on the employee experience. And I think we fell into the trap that I guess probably a lot of support leaders probably fall into, which is customer experience. But the customer experience is really an output. The input is the employee experience. And so we're really doubling down and really increasing our focus on the employee experience and making sure that they are taken care of. We've empowered them in the right way. We've trained them in a quality way. They feel part of the culture. They feel that the work is connected to something meaningful and that they have a meaningful career path and development path. We believe that's really the key to a great customer experience, because if you don't have a motivated and engaged workforce that feels like they want to deliver that level of exceptional experience, you're never going to achieve what you ultimately want to in terms of a great customer support. So that's really what we're focused on right now. And we're, like I said, created a dedicated position, and a lot of our investment, a lot of my time right now is really going into that.
Yeah, and Julie has a great comment. Happy agents equal happy customers, and that's a happy business. I think that's a great note to leave it on. It went so quickly, Chris. I'm sure we could stay on for another hour and people would have a lot of questions, but thank you for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Your experiences with us today. We really appreciate it. And thanks to you at home for watching. We hope you enjoyed today's session. And if you want to leave your thoughts, there's a link to a survey. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you do respond, you may be in with a chance to win a $20 Starbucks gift card. So we'll be back again in July for a CX Moment. So keep an eye out for our next special guest. Thank you again to Chris. Thanks to you at home. And until the next time, from all of us here at Zendesk, take care. We'll see you very soon.